Now let's see how the conditional control structures can be used. Now let's see how the conditional control structures can be used for implementing your applications with the help of some code snippets. So let's start a new file. So in the same example that we have discussed in the theory, we'll be discussing the same example. So I'm going to read the value of marks from the keyboard, and I'm using the function input for that purpose. I'm asking the user to enter the marks. So enter student marks. So once the student enters the marks, so that will be captured by this function input, and it returns a string. But I want to apply some arithmetic operations, and arithmetic operations cannot be done on the string values. So whatever the user enters, and that will be returned as a string by the input function, and in turn I'm using the int function. That is, I'm going to typecast the string value to the integer so that I'll be able to apply the arithmetic operations. Now let's try to use the if structure, and here I'm going to check the marks of the students, and if the marks are above or equal to 40, then so you are going to check the condition, and if in case the condition is true, then you are going to find out the grade of the student. So if the student's marks are above 40, then the grade of the student is treated as pass. So I'm assigning that string to the variable grade, and once the grade is computed, I'm going to display that value. Grade of the student is the grade of the student is available in the variable grade. So let's display that. And once the grade is displayed, let's display the marks also. Marks. So there's a typo. Let's correct it. So let's display the marks of the student also. Done. So when this condition is true, you are going to execute these three statements. The grade will be evaluated to pass, and then you are displaying the grade of the student, and you are going to display the marks of the student. So these three statements I want to execute when the condition is true. In addition, once you come out of the if block, I want to display, just for the sake of our understanding, end of the program, end of the processing the student marks, right? So end of the program. So once the simple if condition is implemented, so let's save this code. So I'm going to save this code before I execute. So sample, so if test1, something like that. So let's save it. So it's saved, and then run it. I'm going to run this code. So once the code is executed, it's asking the prompt to the user, enter student marks. So I'm going to enter the student marks as 89 marks. So it evaluates it. Because the marks entered is more than 40, so it executes these three statements, right? So first thing is the grade is evaluated to pass, and then you are displaying the grade of the student as pass. So that's how the statement is displayed. Then you are also displaying the marks of the students. So it's displaying the marks of the students. And after the execution of this if block, you are going to execute the further statements that are placed after the if condition. So it executes all those statements, and then once it is done, it terminates. So that is how the flow of execution would be when you use a simple if structure. Now let's execute the same program, and let's enter the student marks as 30. So in case a student has scored 30 marks, so in that case, so after reading the marks of the students, so it checks this condition. Because this condition is not met, so these set of statements that you are placing inside this if block will not be executed. And the statements that are placed after the if block, so this is the statement that is placed after this if block. So this statement would be executed. That's why it's displaying the message end of the program. So these set of statements would not be executed. So this is how you can use the condition, the if structure, to check the condition and skip the set of statements. These statements would be executed only when this condition is met. Otherwise, they will be skipped. And now, if you observe this example, so you are just writing the code that is to be executed only when this condition is met. Assume that you want to do some other processing when the student scores less than 40. So here, if you observe, when I enter the marks as 30, so it's not processing anything, right? So it's not showing what is the grade of the student. So in case I want to do that also. So in that case, what you can do is you can continue the else block. So that is, you are going to select one of the two possible two possible paths. So inside this else block, I'm going to compute the grade. Depending on the marks, I'm going to compute the grade. So when the student marks are greater than or equal to 40, then you are executing this set of statements. When that condition is not met, means the marks are less than 40. That indicates that the student failed the subject, right? So you are going to evaluate the grade of the student as fail. Now, you just display the grade of the student. So the same set of statements can be used actually. So you are displaying the grade of the student. But now when you execute in the else part, so the grade would be fail, and the marks, whatever you enter into the marks variable, so that will be displayed. So once you observe, so depending on the marks that are entered into this variable, if the condition is met, then these set of statements would be executed. When the condition is failed, then these set of statements would be executed. So irrespective of the condition, the statements that are placed after the if else block, they will be executed always. Remember that. Now let's save this code and run the code. It's asking you to enter the marks. So I'm entering the marks as 90. So when the student marks are more than 40, then so this block of statements are executed, and this is how you got this output. Now let's run this code again, and so enter marks as 20. So when you enter the marks as 20, the condition fails, right? So that's how this set of statements would not be executed, and these are the set of statements that are executed. So that's how the grade is evaluated to fail and the details are displayed. And if you observe, in both the cases, end of the program is executed, because this is not part of the if or else block, and this is the code that is placed after the if else structure. So if you observe, when the student marks are more than 40, only the statements are executed. When it is less than that, only this set of statements are executed. That means at any point of time, so only one of these, so either this or this would be executed, never both. So that's how this if else structure is also known as the selection control structure or the conditional control structure. So once the block execution is over, the control is forwarded to the statement that is placed after the if else structure. And to indicate the block, we are using the indentation. So similar to the C, C++ or Java, we do not have any curly braces to indicate the block structure. Only thing is you need to use the indentation. Here if you observe, so you are leaving some spaces to indicate that indentation, to indicate the block structure. And moreover, all the statements that are placed inside the block are having the uniform indentation. Now, so let's continue the example further, and let's extend this to elif block. I'm going to check the condition, one more condition, and I'm using the if else structure. So here I'm going to extend this example to when the student marks are greater than or equal to 40, I'm simply calculating the grade as pass, but I want it to be either the first class or second class. I want to evaluate that also in addition to pass. Then I can do that with the condition. So when the marks are greater than or equal to 40 and marks are less than 60, that indicates that the student is just passed with second class, right? So now the grade of the student would be second class, and you are displaying the grade in addition to that marks, right? Now, so I'm going to check another condition, and to check that condition, I'll be using the elif block. So if this condition is met, that is when the student marks are between 40 and 60, then this block would be executed. And in case if marks are greater than or equal to 60, then this set of, I want to execute another set of statements, because the student grade in that case would be first class. So when the marks are greater than or equal to 60, then it is first class, right? So here again, I'm displaying the details. And when these two conditions fail, that means marks are not greater than or equal to 40. In that case, of course, so we are placing the statements in the else block to indicate that the student is failed. Now let's see the execution part of it. So I'm going to enter the student marks. So I'm entering the student marks. So to fail the student. So now you observe the student's marks are entered as 20. First, it checks this condition. So student marks are not between 40 and 60. And moreover, student marks are also not greater than or equal to 60. And they are, so these two conditions failed. So that's how it falls into this else block. And it assigns the grade value as fail and it displays the details. And now let's re-execute this code. Now I'm entering the student marks as 55. So when the student marks are 55, then the first condition itself met and then this block would be executed. Right? That's how you are getting second class and the details. And in that case, these two other blocks would not be executed. Now let's continue and see the execution one more time. So with 65 marks, so when the student marks are 65, this condition fails. So then it checks this condition. So now marks are greater than or equal to 60. This is evaluated to true. Because of that, this block would be executed. And because this block this condition is true, this block is executed and it will never come and checks this condition. Remember, so once this is true, this block would be executed and these two blocks would be ignored. And when this condition is fail and this condition is true, then in that case, so this block would be executed and after that, this condition will not be tested anymore. So that's how at any point in time, using the conditional control structures or the selection control structures, one of the multiple paths can be selected. Now let's have an example to see how the nested if structure can be used. So when the student fails, here I want to embed one if else structure as part of the else block. So if you want, you can include even in the if, even in the elif also, but I want to include here as a sample here. So of course the grade is fail, the student failed, but I want to check one more condition. So the internal marks. So let's read another variable. What is the internal marks of the student? So internal marks of the student. I'm going to read that also. So student internal marks. So this code would be enough. Now let's see how we can use to understand the reason for the student's failure, whether it is because of the bad performance in the internal marks or good performance in the bad performance in the external marks. So I'm going to check the condition. So if internal marks are less than or equal to 24, that indicates that this performance is reasonably good in the internal marks. So I'm going to display that details also. So print, so student performance is bad in the, when the internal marks are less than or equal to 24, then that indicates that the student's performance is bad in the internal marks itself. Right? And when that condition is false, then that indicates that so student's performance is good in the internal marks. So that's what the message I'm going to display. Remember, you should not place the statements with different indentations because they are at the same level. Please ensure that. Student performance is good. Okay, let's change that to good. It's good in the internal marks. Yeah. So now let's see. Let's execute and see this. I'm going to enter the student marks. So when the student marks are, I'm just giving the marks as 60. Okay, just to check it. So it's asking for the internal marks also. The internal marks I'm giving it as 25. Of course, when the student marks are 60, where you are, So this condition will be tested. Because this condition fails, so this condition will be tested. This condition will be tested, and because this is met, so this block would be executed and it displays the first class. Now let's see and execute it further to check the nested if structure. So 20 is the student marks, and let's see the student's internal marks. Student internal marks are something like maybe 10. So 10 are the student's internal marks. So because the grade is of course fail, so student performance is, but the student performance is good in the internal marks. So that's what the message we are getting. So here if you observe how it executes this, so first this condition would be tested. So this is fail because the marks are less than or equal to 20, and then it checks this condition. So this is also false. So then it comes to the else block, of course, because these two conditions fail, then it comes to this block. The grade is evaluated to fail, and then you are checking the internal marks for the students. Of course, the internal marks are less than or equal to 24. So the marks we entered for the internal is 10 marks. So then it is saying, because it's less than or equal to, so now let's enter the student marks as something like, yeah, 35 is the student marks, and the internal marks is only 10. So because the student's performance is very poor in the internal marks, you are getting the indication that the student's performance is bad in the internal marks. And of course, obviously, because the total marks are less than or equal to less than 40, saying that the student failed in the subject and these are the marks he attained, right? So that's how your program is executing. Let's see how it is done. So first it checks this condition, the condition fails. So it checks to, it comes to the else elif part and it checks this condition. This condition also fails. As both these conditions are false, it checks, it comes to the else part, and then it assigns a grade to fail, and you have embedded one if else part in the else block. So you remember that this kind of structure, this kind of embedding one if else structure inside another if condition or in the else condition or even in the elif condition, such kind of structures are known as nested if structures, because you are placing one conditional structure inside the other conditional structure. Now you are checking the internal marks of the students. So because they are, so you enter the internal marks as 10, because they are less than or equal to 24, so the student performance is bad in the internal marks. So that kind of information is provided by the application. And so because if condition is true, the else part would be skipped as usual, and once the if else structure is done, so it comes to the statements that are after this if else structure, then it displays the grade and marks of the student. So that's how this part of the code, this part of the conditional structure be selected and execution is done, and after that the statement that is placed after this if else structure would be executed. So now I hope you understand how you can implement various types of conditional control structures to select as one of the multiple paths that are available when you implement your applications, or how to skip certain set of statements when the condition given is not met. Even you can extend this to multiple levels also. So this elif, you can have multiple elifs also. If you want, you can even have elif, one more elif, more than more number of elif statements also you can extend this to. So with this, the hands-on session on the conditional control structures is over. I hope you understand that. I hope you understand all the details of the implementing various conditional control structures.